Hey folks, how's it going? This is Iron Seagull here, and this is going to be my recap of just things that stood out to me in the official developer live stream for the Life and Death expansion pack, which ended up being 2 hours long. Oh my gosh. For comparison, the developer live streams for Lovestruck and for Rent were just under an hour and a half, and Horse Ranch was barely over an hour, so this is a decent amount longer. Before we get right into it, they did give a disclaimer saying they enabled all packs for this live stream, not just base game plus Life and Death. I believe that's the first time they've ever done that sort of setup, with it being more than just base game plus new pack. So they show off this new house here, really cool, and showing the holes that you can put on the roof. So nice little decor detail that you can put in. And showing off this neo-Romanian greenhouse. Chased by Death is what they call a challenge trait. So there is more danger going on here, because normally the game would warn you when your sim is about to die so you have a chance to save them. But there's a chance of that not happening if your sim is chased by death. But with that, they also value their own lives more. They are keenly aware of their own mortality. They are happiest when they're achieving something meaningful with their limited time left. And they mentioned that there's some story moments that can happen with this trait, but they didn't get really specific about that. Sims with the macabre trait embrace the more dark side of life, where they enjoy hanging out in the moonlight or in crypts. They're not really so afraid of death. They're also supposed to be good at handling their own grief. Then we have the skeptical trait, where they find it hard to believe that occults are real. So, for example, if they run into a ghost, they can demand proof that they really are a ghost. And it even integrates with all of the pack-related occults. So, for example, you could even be a vampire who has the skeptical trait and can doubt themselves. But there's also a hidden Grimborn trait. If you're familiar with the Bloodline trait from Realm of Magic, then you have a good idea of how this works. So Grimborn Sims have an extended life, and they have a scythe birthmark under their ear. And then when they have children, then they'll have a weaker version of the trait, and they won't have the birthmark and extended life. Oh, it probably goes without saying at this point, but yeah, you do have to have a baby with the Grim Reaper for their offspring to have that trait. Next is more info on the crows. Yes. So there's 3 different basic stats where they have mood, which in this case, Mr. Chaos is a wee bit angry. You have to feed them once in a while. And there's also the perch state, which I'm pretty sure means like you have to keep it clean, because there is a clean perch interaction. You can teach the crow mimicry. If you're a macabre sim, you can plan a nefarious plot with it. And there is also the option to have a crow fetch a gift for you. You can also give your own gifts to crows, and there is, of course, the possibility of getting killed by one if you provoke it enough. The only thing I'm not sure about at this point is if the crows can die of old age eventually, but they are really cute. There is a new On Hallowed Grounds lot trait, where it adds a creepier vibe to your lot. So the lights can flicker, the TV will occasionally show static if you have one, and there's also supposed to be a mysterious rift that can pop up, but they don't spoil what that does here. We got a demonstration of how wills work after a sim has passed away. So this sim's mother passed yesterday, and now she has received that will in the mail. And how other sims react nearby depends on their traits and relationship to the deceased. And for example, if a sim is in the will who is materialistic, but they don't get any new objects, then they may scoff at it basically and have a negative reaction. So they have the sim read the will out loud, though unfortunately the daughter is pretty indifferent to it since she didn't have a close relationship with the grandma in the first place. But there are 3 different things that pop up. So there's a notification that she gets the grandfather clock from her mother, and then there's also funeral activities preferred by the deceased mother, and a note that you can add where you can just type whatever you want. With heirlooms, they mentioned that there is the option to make many objects, including ones from packs and heirloom. But if you're annoyed with seeing the make an heirloom interaction and everything, then there is an option in the options menu to turn that off. When you hover over an object in live mode that's assigned as an heirloom, you will see that pop up saying that it is the Sims heirloom. So that's pretty nice. And there's some custom text that Simgrew Morgan wrote there. And with the heirloom objects, there is a new heirlooms menu. So you could choose to call upon the Sims ghost. And there's think about original owner, pawn the heirloom so you can get money from it, claim a higher value, and pass on the heirloom to a different Sim. Next, they talk about the Soul's Journey and bucket list, and now I understand what this is supposed to be. So it is an overall progression system where you do have bucket list goals that help progress your Sim's Soul's Journey, but even things like completing aspirations also feed into this. And then on the actual bucket list panel there with all the icons, you're basically progressing up with it as you just complete more of these goals in your life. However, you eventually do hit a wall where you cannot progress any farther while your Sim is still alive, because there is that one icon with the ghost and the lock. So to get to there and past that, your Sim has to die. Your Sim has to be rebirthed or just come back as a playable ghost with unfinished business. Just to zoom in more on the UI here, here's the second last point that you can get to in a Soul's Journey while your Sim is still alive. So quite a journey, what a ride it's been. Summer can now leave her lasting mark on the world by gaining the pass down social interaction. Not sure what that does, as well as the ability to create additional heirloom objects. You can let the bucket list populate over time if you'd like, but they've also carried over the journal from the Parenthood game pack. So now that will also have a bucket list pie menu where you can write a goal that's completely random. You can write a goal out of a category. And there's also one other option that's only available if your Sim is chased by death, if they've witnessed a death recently, or if they've attended an afterlife anonymous meeting, which is write the perfect goal. So then that will bring up the selection of all of the current bucket list goals that your Sim can possibly have. We saw a couple of examples, both actually integrate with existing DLCs. So the first one they got was to go on an unforgettable camping trip. And I love how they even have their own descriptions to go with them to kind of really encourage you to get out and maybe do something that you wouldn't have done otherwise. And there's one to go on an interstellar adventure to Batu. Yeah, they really went there. But yep, you can do that, or you also have the option to scrap your current goals and start over if it's not really suiting the story that you want to tell. But they did end up choosing a goal to write a will, so they clarified there's a few different ways to go about getting a will. You can write it yourself on a computer if you want. You can go to a lawyer NPC at the Family Day Festival like we saw in the trailer. You can go and click on the City Hall in Ravenwood to start writing a will. And you can also hire a lawyer to come to your house, which sounds like the best option to me for the most immersion. If you want to make a playable lawyer office, though, where you have lawyers automatically being hired, I'm still not sure if there's a way to do that. Maybe that's only just like a thing that you see at the Family Day Festival. They talk a little bit about the Thanatology skill, but not too much. So it is supposed to tie into the Reaper active career, but it also will eventually allow your Sims to make a special soup that can boost the Sims' motivations, and you can also speak dead languages. With a completed will, there's some different options that you could go through, like you can assign heirlooms to Sims based from the ones that you've already picked, but there's also dependents, so if your Sim passes on and they have children and or pets, they can choose the recipient of those children and pets who will actually end up getting them. There's also the option to give away a percentage of your household funds to another sim once the sim has passed on. There's also preferred funeral activities for the sim, and the ability to choose how your sim's tombstone will look when they die. One aspect we really didn't know much about is a new NPC in Ravenwood named Edith, who is this child ghost who hangs out near the new wishing well. And you can attempt to communicate with her, and if you're successful, you can get her mark, which means you can get even better rewards from the wishing well. But she can potentially shriek at you and your sim will just run off. Your sim, if they have the ghost historian aspiration, there is eventually a goal to make contact with Edith. So, well, win or lose, that will complete the goal if you at least try to talk to her. Also, in Ravenwood, they show that this square here is where both the Family Day and Celebration of Life festivals take place. The Town Hall rabbit hole has a few more options than I thought, so there's the Start Will option there that we already talked about. You can use the amenities to help fill your sim's needs. There's Focus Camera On, so this is really helpful if you get lost, so you can easily focus more on the points of interest in this particular neighborhood. There's also the option to read Billboard About. I'm not sure what that entails. And then you can read Ancient Archives, which apparently has some story moments. Nearby, there's also a pair of haunted house rabbit holes that your sims can explore, and you can even ghostly infest if your current sim is a ghost. Another new NPC that shows up in Ravenwood is the Mysterious Merchant. So you can actually take a chance on a mysterious item. You can purchase an authentic pre-made will. You can sell Fear and Goodwill Essence for money, which those two things you can actually get while your sim is a ghost. And you can purchase wares, including souls. So if you're in the Reaper career, then you'll actually be able to have a bit of an easier time meeting your quotas. Speaking of that active career, we do get to see that next. So this is such a cool looking atmosphere with this hidden lot. And you do have to, of course, do some active tasks to progress here. So the first thing that they did was scry for an assignment using that fountain with the crow on it. And what they ended up getting was a few sims who all died because of the cow plant and its tempting cake. And this did happen at a venue, so that answered one question of mine where I wasn't sure if it was always going to be residential lots, but they also clarify that it is possible for your playable sims to get involved in these situations, but you do have the option of sparing them. I do wish there was an option to leave them out of this entirely, but at least I don't have to worry about like having to reap my playable sims. It is possible for sims in these situations to beg for their life, and you can console them. And you can apparently also ask the urn for a review. After they finished reaping all those souls, they went back to HQ, and they released souls into the netherworld using this Realm of Magic-like portal. And then they went to a computer to analyze death trends. From that, they got a pop-up saying that the death by killer rabbit is not trending as high as it could be. So Grim has an idea to start a petting zoo featuring the rabbits. And you can choose to warn sims of the danger or just advertise as a fluffy pet. They went with the second option and they gained some relationship with Grim from that. However, they lost some relationship with Grim because they did some more scrying and a situation came up where they could deal with that shady merchant that we talked about earlier. But since they want to get some souls from him when they don't meet their quotas, they let him go. You can also read about historical deaths, which I'm really curious about, but they didn't show that off here. Before now, we really hadn't seen a funeral from start to finish. So there are a few different ways to arrange it. You can do it through the calendar, the phone, but the most convenient way is through the sim's tombstone or urn, since it automatically assigns that deceased sim as a departed sim. You can assign a host, guest, hired mourner, and entertainer. The guest attire can also be decided, much like with the weddings from my wedding stories. And then there's the list of different activities, and the ones that are outlined in the deceased will are marked with a blue icon to help you choose. You can pick the venue, and there's more choices than I thought. It doesn't have to be at the new cemetery venue type. You could even have it at a bar or a nightclub if you'd like. There's a podium you can use to call over all the guests, eulogize lightheartedly or mournfully, or have a moment of silence, which is actually the one they started out with as the guests arrived. There is a memorial display object that you can use to dedicate to a sim, so you can choose any sim who has deceased, and they'll actually generate a picture of that sim right before they died. So if you did miss the chance to take a picture of that sim while they were alive, then you don't have to worry about that. However, if you do happen to have a picture of that sim, you can slide it into that frame. You can also use a casket where you can place the urn inside of it, and you can place a couple of different tributes, including a drape and flowers. There's also a gravesite object where you can slot urns and tombstones on top of them, and there's also some different swatches that you can change while you're in build by. We also have the real name confirmation of Nervous Subject, Nyan Spectre. He actually ended up tying into a quest that they were currently doing. They just needed to report their findings to him because they did it off camera before. But they got a tarot card, the Advocate, as a reward. And it's actually part of something very similar to the Village Errand system that we have in Cottage Living. So that's really cool to see that back. I think it's a nice way of giving more depth to the world and its residents. Not that it's something I wanted to see every single time we get a new world, but just enough moderation so that it would feel special every time we got it. This time around, the quests do revolve around the new tarot card collection, so you can go up to these shrines around Ravenwood, so you can find out currently who is part of the Order of Lenore. Their goal is to reunite all the cards of Lady Ravendancer Goth's tarot deck. I knew that name sounded familiar, so I looked it up, and turns out that is actually part of the name of the very first premium gameplay item we got in the Sims 3 store. Lady Ravendancer Goth's Book o' Spells is also referenced again in paranormal stuff with the crystal ball. More details on the tarot cards. So there's a collection, and you have 26 cards to collect in total. And as someone who recently got into the Persona games, I find this quite fascinating. And there's a couple of different things going on mechanically with this collection. So while you can buy a basic tarot deck to do some readings through build buy mode, you will actually have a more powerful tarot deck if you actually collect them all. And the collection method is not the same as it is, say, like with the frogs. You just get them all from the frog logs. No, there's actually a different method for every card, and you can get a hint as to how to find each one by hovering over its silhouette in the collections menu. Using a basic tarot deck, they did a nightly reading, and they ended up drawing the Cups Minor Arcana, but in reverse. So it ended up saying, half full of emotions, but empty of the energy needed to process them. Your cup needs more time to equalize. Feel your feels you can mop up after. Crying it out or using a voodoo doll is desired. Overall, this sounds really cool. I think this could easily become one of my favorite collections in the whole game, especially since there is some gameplay aspect to them too, not just the whole collecting them bit. One other aspect of the memorial object is you can use it as an easy way to add a ghost into your household as long as the ghost isn't currently present on the lot. Then they had their sim have a near-death experience by provoking the crow, though it was kind of weird how it looked with the animation because the crow didn't really attack her. She just kind of fell to the ground as the crow flew off. So I don't know if that's a glitch or what, but yeah, that was pretty weird. But there is a pop-up that can happen where you have a close encounter with death where Grim basically yells at you for tiptoeing the line between life and death so much. So basically warning you that your next mistake will be fatal. And you can say, you can't scare me, or beg for mercy. Next, they talk about the upgrade that ghosts have with life and death installed. So when you cause emotional impacts on other Sims, you will get experience points that you can use to level up on the skill tree. The blue side represents benevolent powers. The red side represents malevolent powers. And there's some neutral powers you can also unlock. One of them being Transcendent Woohoo, where you can actually have your ghost woohoo with a human sim and also be able to woohoo in just about any object that a ghost can possess. Next, they killed off their sim using the crow, and turns out that if your sim knows a sim who just died, then there's not only the plead for life option, but you can also challenge Grim through various games. So the ones that showed up here were chess, but also if you have for rent, there's hopscotch. There's also the ability to challenge him to a basketball game if you have city living. I don't know, the theoretical imagery of Grim getting a slam dunk and being like, ha, your loved one is still dead, is just like over the top hilarious in a very Sims-like way. There's supposed to be other games you can challenge him to as well, so I'm interested in seeing what the full list is. Ghosts actually have a new interaction now where you can set ghost color. It's very much like controlling the color of light. I thought this was in the free update, so I was very confused looking for it. It would have made more sense to me if something like that was free, but yeah, it is limited to life and death. Then they go to the Morningvale neighborhood in order to visit the Baleful Bog, and they load into Club Eternity. This looks amazing! And it's created by EA creator MySimsphony. This whole neighborhood looks really gorgeous as well. So in the Baleful Bog, you can have a human sim go and swim in it and turn into a temporary ghost. However, it becomes a new death if your Sims use that too often. But if you want to rebirth, then this is actually where you go. Then they answered one of my lingering questions about this pack. What is going on with the ghost cow plants? So there is one just out in the world called Percival the Patient, but you can, through the reward store with satisfaction points, get your own ghost cow plants. So no, thankfully they're not just world objects. One aspect of the rebirthing process we didn't already see in the gameplay trailer is that there is an option to make your sim genetically look like offspring of Sims in a household. So for example, rebirthing into the Goths and then having Bella and Mortimer assigned as the parents, so then the genetics passed down onto the sim who's being rebirthed. Though you can still revert the sim to look as they did in their past life. You can even rebirth into an occult if you want, but I'm just glad there is an option to rebirth with genetics so that adjusting to your new family is a little more natural, even though you're still falling out of the sky. Next, we have the Create a Sim segment hosted by Mercy. I'm glad she's still at Maxis. And turns out she plays similar to me. She spends a lot of time in Create a Sim. Though I'm actually not going to spend much time here because I want to do a full review when I have the pack myself. But from what I've seen so far, it does look a lot better than when I was just looking at the leaked thumbnails. But it's interesting. It's interesting, this Death Shroud core idea that they have. And one new thing that they did is that ghosts have some clothing all to themselves, including some period pieces. So I am more curious to check out Create a Sim in this pack than I was before. But now we move on to the world overview, and we get to see the world icon animation for Ravenwood. And I think this looks really great. I feel like it stands out a lot compared to the ones that we already have. And the crow, the crow's so cute. I love that. Almost has like a little hairstyle to it. This world is where you can really tread the line between life and death. Whispering Glen is in the countryside, and it's pretty grounded in reality still, But then when you get to Crow's Crossing, the town center, then the veil becomes weaker, and that would also explain why you see the specters floating around in the town square. And then there's Morning Vale, where you actually get to go beyond the veil itself, kind of embracing the afterlife. So I think this would be a great place to have some supernatural sims live if you have some of those packs. Might have to have like a residential rental that I download from the gallery to house a bunch of them. They revealed the 4 EA creators who built lots for this pack: Kate Emerald, Simsphony, Sophie the Sim, and Create4Sims. A bit more on Morning Vale. Turns out it has its own town hall like Crow's Crossing with the same options. And there's the meeting site of the Afterlife Anonymous. And there's the Guardian Tree over here where Alice roams, who's the weeping mother of ghosts. And she actually has her own quest that you can do for her. They showed a bit of the Whispering Glen, which is the countryside more inspired by Romania. And it's pretty, though I feel like I have to really see this one for myself. They kind of skimmed over it, but they show the Ancestor Cliff face, which has the sad face instead of what we saw in the trailer because it's supposed to be a full moon tonight. So that's a really interesting little detail. They also mentioned that there's these collector NPCs that can show up near signs where you can sell your collectibles to them, though we didn't see them here. But there is still the option to click on a focus camera interaction on the sign so you can more easily find the stuff around this neighborhood. But overall, I think this world looks really great and probably one that I will use often. And I have a feeling my ambient ASMR video for Ravenwood is going to be really fun to do. I don't have too much to say on the build buy stuff. I wanted to mainly focus on gameplay for this recap, but from what I've seen, it looks good. And I love that we can have the painting with all the tarot card art, and there's all these different references to the lore. Like there's one with Princess Cordelia, and there's a couple of rabbits hanging out near her. And then there's one where you can kind of see the pit beast from The Sims Medieval. So that's interesting. I'll have to really take a better look at some of these later. There's a bassinet, which is good. And there is a no-go sign, which actually does stop ghosts from visiting your lot. So that's a nice little addition. But that is it for the live stream. So overall, I think it was a pretty interesting watch. If you have the time, then definitely go for it. And it's interesting, there is a lot that we already knew, but a lot of smaller details and actual logistics of things that we didn't really see in action until now. This may end up becoming one of the few Sims 4 expansion packs that's truly worth the $40 US, though I would still recommend holding off on pre-orders because we don't know how glitchy this pack is going to be once it's out in the wild. But I think it really could end up being up there with Cottage Living and Seasons. Maybe they still have it in them to create a really good expansion pack once in a while. I was getting concerned that Cottage Living, at least for me, was going to be the last one in that regard. Well, hopefully they can pull off a hobbies or bands pack in the same way. But anyways, that's it for now. So feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below on this live stream and life and death in general in the comment section below. And be sure to subscribe if you'd like to keep up with my latest gaming content. I will talk to you all later and have a great day. Thanks for watching.